It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 477. Tonight I'm joined by Grace.
What? Hello.
Kodra.
Howdy.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hello.
We just lost the front of the alphabet this week.
Apparently.
Happy Mother's Day to the mothers out in the world out there, because by the time this airs, it will be Mother's Day. So, yeah.
Indeed.
We've got a bunch of topics that, or at least some of them that got bounced from another show, and we will start off with surprise.
Surprise! We kind of mentioned this. I thought this was going to be coming later in the year. I just heard rumors, hey, there's going to be another episode of Bluey. It's called Surprise. I figured like maybe I'd wait a couple of months, but apparently it was always planned to be like a week after the
next week, yeah.
Yeah. This is a normal 7-minute episode. The plot of which is Bandit is trying to watch a race on the TV, and both Bingo and Bluey want to play a very, very different games. And so it's mostly just like him trying to juggle these three competing desires. It opens up. It opens up with Bluey asking what it's like to have kids, and then asking, "Am I going to have kids?" To which like the mom replies, "Well, if you want them," but doesn't really give a satisfying answer to like what's it like to have kids.
Yeah, her answer is like, well, it's kind of hard to explain.
And there is a wonderful scene in this in which Bandit is on the floor rocking back and forth this beer koozie and a tennis ball that is Bandit's like pretend kid, and while he's getting pelted with balls from Bluey's like Nerf blaster.
It's like a Nerf shooter, yeah.
It's a Nerf shooter a la like, but it's like hand mounted, like you would imagine. Looks like a Mega Man thing.
It really does, yeah. It's like a Mega Man blaster that shoots Nerf balls.
And
apparently she borrowed it from one of her friends. So,
yeah, Chucky.
You know, she only has it for today.
Yeah, she only has it for today. It's from Chucky, which is Lucky's brother. But this is the moment which the mom says, This is what it's like to have kids. Rocking a child back and forth, singing a song while being pelted with balls. It was really fun. And it ends with this really like heartwarming moment where, so Bingo has like one of the kids is a larger koozie for like a thermos or something, but the same size tennis ball. And so like, this is a kid who needs help. Like this is a kid who needs to go to the hospital because
her head won't stay on.
Her head won't stay on. Yes. And Bandit is giving like this speech about how it's going to be okay because you have a lot of brothers and sisters. Your mom and I were here for you the whole way. And like hiding behind the tree next to him, like ready for an ambush, is Bluey.
Because the title Surprise comes from this entire time Bluey has been leaping out and to surprise Bandit and pelt him with Nerf balls.
Yes.
So she's clearly getting ready to do that again.
And then she jumps out and doesn't shoot him, and then says, like, actually, why don't I take care of this kid? Like, sort of, this is like Bluey showing real growth. Like, Bluey showed, I mentioned in the last time, like, when I was watching The Sign, I felt like the big moment for me was Bluey comforting Bingo and just showing how much growth she's had over the episode. This felt like a reinforcement of that. And then Bandit ends with the line of, sometimes your kids will surprise you. And then
we flash forward.
And then we flash forward like 20 or 30 years. Like, you see the trees around the house grow. You see all of this new technology. You see, like, visible signs of wear to the house. And
There's like drones flying around outside.
there's drones flying packages around. And the door rings, and Chili's coming with big old glasses on because her vision's gone. And
I mean, it's relevant that at no time in the entire series, save one episode, is Chili ever seen wearing glasses.
I forgot she had been seen wearing glasses. Yeah.
She's seen wearing reading glasses in one episode.
Mm-hmm.
And at the door is Bluey, adult Bluey, saying like she was in the neighborhood and wanted to stop by. And they have a chat. And like Bandit, who is now a little hard of hearing, Chili has to yell for him several times to get him to come. Comes and they chat. Then they close the door, and the doorbell rings again. And this is a callback to an earlier moment of the show where Bandit did this. And you see on the outside a tiny little puppy with a similar get-up to Bluey's, like a gun arm and everything, charging up to attack Bandit.
Yep.
Which is supposed to be Bluey's kid.
Presumably Bluey's kid. Yeah.
Yes.
And apparently there's like fan wars over who the dad is.
Oh, gosh. Boy, let me just say my favorite bit of character design, because there is great evidence for both sides. This was tailor-made to cause a fight.
Because half the fans want it to be Mackenzie's kid, half the fans want it to be Jean-Luc's.
And I am here for the drama.
And I'm like, it's a cartoon dog. Chill out.
It's a cartoon dog who's been like 5.
Yeah.
For the majority of the series.
You don't need to be invested in Bluey's like romantic relationships. That's
no.
Yikes. But yes. I said last time that The Sign felt like more of a finale than anything I've ever seen as a finale. This feels like more of an epilogue than anything I've ever seen on a show. I don't know, like there was definitely a post on the Reddit purporting to be from somebody at Ludo with some amount of verification from the mod saying, hey, we're not doing any more. Like, people are keeping this going to keep, like, the Bluey hype train going, to keep the merch rolling, but, like, Bluey is done. I think Bluey is probably done in this format. The format that we're used to.
Like, everything that I've like interviews that I've heard with Joe Brum over the years, and just the way he talks about things, like I don't see him doing that. I absolutely see him like evolving the show into its next form, whatever that is. But actively lying to us to keep no, that I don't.
Well, so and here's I don't know. Here's the thing for me. Is it lying? All that has been said is Bluey's not done.
Yep.
That's all that has been said. There's not, we're working on another season of Bluey. Right. We're working on more Bluey. It has just been, when we run out of steam, we're going to be done. Mm-hmm. And Bluey's not done.
Yeah.
But
there's going to be something. We just don't know what it's going to be.
I mean, he has clearly stated that he wants to do a movie, like a feature film. So, like, I imagine he is still angling for that. I bet
Disney would love that.
we already know that there is a series of minisodes, like 20 more like minute to 2 minute long like shorts that are going to be coming out in the near term. I think Bluey as a concept is not done, but I do think I feel like this is such a good note to end what this show has been, this run has been. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I really want them to continue.
I don't know that it necessarily needs it. Yeah. Like, if this is where the show ends, it was a really good show.
Oh yeah, this is a perfectly fine ending place if that's what it is. Yeah. And I mean, and one of the things with a show like this is like the voice actors for the kids, they're all getting older. And I don't see them recasting those roles. So
yeah, unless it is as a distinctly older version of those characters.
They age them up, like obviously had a different voice actress voicing adult Bluey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see us getting like 7-year-old Bluey and it's a completely different kid voicing them. Like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't, no.
But yeah, it was a really fun episode. It was very like a lot of like last minute stinger shocker things in this drop of Bluey stuff. I really liked it. This is some of the better Bluey content I think we've been getting. It's a good place to wrap it up, I think, if they are doing that.
Like the main thing that I had hoped to see more of that, if they wrap it up here, we wouldn't get is more episodes focused away from the healers on the surrounding, because we've gotten more of those in the most recent season, and like that was something that I felt like there was more opportunity to do even more of those, and that would have been nice.
I know there's a lot of people who've been talking about like a Rusty spinoff because Rusty was originally supposed to have a bigger role in the series.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Rusty is effectively like the original protagonist character, like from the very earliest notion of what the show was going to be. But yeah, like that's the main thing that I'd be a little sad if we don't get to see more of, if we don't get that opportunity. But it is a good ending for the show, so can't complain too much.
Kodra, you have now played through Living World Season 1 in Guild Wars 2?
I have completed Living World Season 1. I have seen that full arc. It definitely, like, I am always going to be hard-pressed to like a clown villain, like the Kafka-esque villain, the Joker villain. So like I was probably never going to be truly in love with Scarlet as a villain. I did feel like they did a good job of bringing like her plan together, like at the end. I also, boy, you really need season 1 to understand why some of the character arcs you're getting are the ones you're getting.
Yes. Yeah, that was my big takeaway.
Yeah. Bram in particular was badly served by the removal of season 1.
Bram was definitely badly served. I honestly think like it felt what this sort of explains why Taimi gets so much love in later seasons. Because she kind of starts off like, if you were coming off of season 1, she's kind of the least likable character. Because, I mean, she's basically spending all of season 1 gushing about how cool Scarlet is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jory and Kaz were definitely cool. And, like, Rox's whole motivation is done in season 1.
That too,
and, like, just, you don't really understand what's going on with that.
Right. I mean, Rox was always lovable. So, like, you didn't have the Bram problem, but, like, you certainly understand Rox as a character better now.
Yeah. Like, that her entire story arc from the beginning has been looking for a place to belong.
Yeah.
Something to be a part of.
So, yes, I'm very happy with the story of season 1. It definitely, like, I mean, I'm sure it feels more rushed to me because, like, I'm sort of playing through these very quickly. It's interesting because, like, you think about it, like, they make comments about how, oh yeah, we've been doing this for like this whole year's worth of conflict has been building up to this, and I'm like, oh right, this was like supposed to be slowly parceled out as opposed to just like going one right after the other.
Yeah.
Which would probably feel like a very different story. But yeah, it's definitely good to see the story back in action and to have a better appreciation for all of the characters that form your guild.
And it also explains the way a lot of characters are somewhat treated during Heart of the Thorns. Like, I feel like having seen Living World Season 1, Heart of Thorns is a much better experience.
I mean, I will say, I feel bad for Bram that he never got to reconnect with his mother. I do not feel bad ever for Heirs to Galkin.
No, God, no.
Nope.
She made her choices, and yeah, they were bad
What,
choices.
what an awful character to give a wonderful voice actor. Like, most of the other original characters got somewhat of a, enjoyable character arc, but
Oh, yeah.
Air never really did.
No, she died. That was her enjoyable character arc. She died.
And then
we enjoyed it.
She came back from the grave to reaffirm that she is in fact as terrible as we all remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she and Snaff showed up, and we were happy to see Snaff.
Yeah, like it always felt bad because I feel like as a Norn player primarily, I was supposed to bond with Aristogalkin, but no, I never did.
Oh,
Air's awful.
I don't know. The whole I feel like they were trying to do something very specific with Destiny's Edge and absolutely failed at it.
Yeah. But yeah, happily over the years, mostly the characters, the Destiny's Edge members have improved. Like, I mean, Ritlock's great. I would argue that Ritlock was one of the better members of Destiny's Edge, even originally. But he's
Keith actually started off good and then became worse in.
I mean, season 2 and Heart of Thorns and.
Keith decided to fill the role of Urianger.
Yeah, she decided she didn't trust us, and it took a while, and like that's mostly been worked out at this point.
Yeah,
and it's
just
good.
Took a while.
She finally realized that maybe she needed to apologize.
But yeah, I'm playing a lot of Guild Wars 2 right now, and I'm having a good time. I really like the Wizards Vault stuff. Time to get at Secrets of the Obscure, though.
Oh, have you not played any of Secrets of the Obscure?
I have not played Secrets of the Obscure, so I don't know about how they're trying to rehabilitate Zoja.
Zoja is not bad. Like, Zoja is a perfectly cromulent character now.
I never really had a problem with Zoja, but I know some people did.
I think she mostly had the "I'm so awesome, look at how awesome I am" problem.
Yeah, that is probably the thing that Destiny's Edge kind of did by you, is that it bought you enough time to establish yourself as an awesome character and then become the leader of a guild rather than like somebody who starts from the bottom and works their way up.
Mm-hmm.
And is always still being overshadowed.
Yeah, like I do kind of wonder if the intent behind Destiny's Edge was different from what we ultimately got.
I mean, I assume the intent was that these characters were meant to be aspirational. Like,
yeah, like I mean, were we supposed to like them?
But
it is a book. Like, there was a whole book about them.
Yeah.
It's just that nobody read them. It's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that whole transmedia experience thing of the 2000s never really did pan out very well.
It really did not.
No, I mean, it always sort of bugged me because the way it was supposed to work was not the way that anybody tried to implement it in the real world, and like, sigh.
And like the worst ones were when like you took a story and cut it into 4 pieces, and some of it was in a game and some of it was in a book and some of it was in a comic book.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean,
some of it was in a radio drama.
What was supposed to happen, and like never did happen, but what was supposed to happen was you take something like Star Wars, right? Which has a big world that you can tell all kinds of different stories in, and you build the world. It's like, you don't say, oh, we're going to take this one story and break it up into 5 different media. You're going to say, hey, we're going to tell a particular kind of story in this book, and then we're going to have a different movie, and those 2 things may intersect. So it's like, oh, if you've read the book, it's like, oh, this movie is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like one story broken up between all of those things. But then moneyed corporate interests who weren't that interested in figuring it out were just like, okay, we're just going to make it so that everybody has to buy everything. And like, the thing that makes it good is that you don't have to buy everything.
Yes.
I mean, like, I blame Shadows of the Empire for setting the pace. That was kind of the beginning of that, and it wasn't really a good success. Like, it brought some interesting stuff to the table, but also it created a scenario where, like, gee, I hope you have a Nintendo 64 if you care about finding out what the rest of the story is.
God, yeah.
I mean, recently, I would say stuff like Ahsoka, which is kind of a extension of Rebels, is an interesting example. Where, like, they are trying to tell a story that is mostly self-contained. I don't know how, like, I've not seen it, but, like, there are a lot of characters who have a lot of backstory from Rebels, and I don't know what the relevance of watching Rebels is. Like, is it important to know who Sabine is?
Like, I feel like you can enjoy Ahsoka without knowing any of that, but also it really helps if you've seen Rebels. And, like, there's a bunch of these intersecting shows now where Tales of the Jedi, for example, told us what Count Dooku's deal was in the Clone Wars and leading up to and past the Clone Wars. And like the new Tales of the Empire series kind of does the same thing, but for Morgan Elsbeth.
But all of these things, they have to walk the fine line where you gain cool information that enhances things by consuming all the media, but it can't make you feel like you have to consume all of it to understand. Because it gets to that point with some of these things, and then it just becomes exhausting, and you want to check out.
Yeah, and that's when you stop.
I do think that this is why, well, in a lot of ways, I think this is why Avengers has struggled post-Endgame, largely because Endgame was a promised end to everything, and then they kind of ran into a bunch of, frankly, they ran into some stuff where they had pinned everything on an actor who kind of, they definitely should have pinned everything on. Like, Jonathan Majors definitely caused some serious problems. Like, if you're going to say, we want everything on Kang the Conqueror, and your Kang the Conqueror is possibly going to jail, I don't know what the details there are.
I mean, the important thing is that he's no longer involved
Kang
in the
Conqueror.
movies.
Yeah.
It's a whole mess.
It's a whole mess. And also, it's like, now there's so much more content that isn't necessarily, like, it's hard to keep track of what's connected and what's not.
Well, and I think the other problem with all the Marvel stuff is the same problem that I've had with Final Fantasy XIV, is they really stuck the landing. And like, the end of, the Infinity Saga felt like a great time for people to get off the train.
Yeah.
And, like, similarly with 14, like, it feels real complete, like, that story, and I'm okay. Like,
yeah, I have the same thing where, and it's a hard thing to deal with, because, like, you don't want to string out your stories forever, but also anytime you actually end a story, that is when people are going to be like, okay, cool, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why soap operas would generally have multiple storylines at different stages of completion. So things could wrap up, but by the time this storyline has wrapped up, these 5 other storylines are at different points, and you want to keep going on those, right?
Well, I mean,
and traditionally,
that's
what comic books did.
Right. Like, this is why comic books have rebooted themselves so often, so that they can have a chance to tell versions of the same story again.
Yeah.
Well, and this is, I mean, it's a huge reason why I just checked out of comic books. Like, by the time I could have gotten into comic books, it was just an endless mountain of, I don't even know which of this is relevant.
Yeah. All of it and none of it.
Yeah, which is like,
that's the problem.
Perfectly true and deeply unhelpful.
So this is kind of a tangential topic, and it feels like this might be a time to weave it in, even though I didn't put it on the list. So I have been thinking about how the Fallout television show just completely nailed it, and the Witcher television show fell apart to the point where, like, I think it was either this week or last week that they announced that there would be no more Witcher.
Wow.
And like the two shows are trying to do different things, whereas like the Witcher show, at least on paper, was trying to tell the story of the novels mostly, which also intersects with the games.
So it ends up being kind of sort of a retelling of a story you already know,
Right.
but not quite the same.
But then the showrunners decided that they wanted to do their own thing, creating this chasm of like broken promises. Because like in theory, if you are creating a show that is specifically telling a story, you expect that show to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And at least do a fair representation of those characters.
Or if you're not, you'd better be very interesting in your deviation.
Right, you better have a clear reason. And this is like the, Final Fantasy VII reboot.
Yes.
They said up front, we are telling a different story than the one you know.
Yeah.
And because of that, it was mostly okay. Like I can accept they're telling a different story than the one I was told the first time.
Yeah, you're prepared for
fine.
things to deviate. And
But-
so, yeah.
But let's be fair. For any TV show that's based on a book or another piece of media, I expect it to mostly follow the book for the first season. And I fully expect it to start going off the rails in its own direction sometime around season 2.
I mean, and to be fair, that's exactly what happened with Witcher.
Yeah.
First season was pretty good. Like it followed. It was essentially one of the novels of short stories being told in screen form, and then they kind of went off the rails. And by season 3, they were really off the rails to the point of basically massacring one of the fan favorite characters and like getting the character totally wrong.
Oh dear.
But, so like you have that scenario, and we've all seen that play out so many times with adaptations, where you get the IP, but the people working on the show want to tell their own story.
Yeah. Like,
so
often they didn't even know anything about that IP before they got attached to this project.
Yeah, so like that's a known problem, and Witcher's just a good representation of that problem. Whereas Fallout is doing this wonderful thing where it is telling a wholly Fallout story, but it's its own thing. Like,
yeah. Well, and I think
disconnected from most of the rest of anything that you might know.
Well, and I think it's extremely helped in that by the fact that up to this point, no two Fallout games have taken place with the same protagonist,
right,
in the same part of the country, in the same decade. We're used to it.
That's the part that I think really works for Fallout, is that The Witcher is the story of Geralt. Fallout is the story of the post-apocalyptic world.
Well, it is the story of your player character in the post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
And like the way that I don't want to go into spoilers on the show, but they have created a scenario where there are 3 characters that you're following in that show, and they each represent a common thought pattern that players align to.
Yes.
There is Goody Two-Shoes, there's the murder hobo, and the person that is entirely focused on a specific goal. And like they work well for representing the POV of people generally playing that game.
Yeah.
I do think that there's an interesting thing going on where, like, in some ways, especially video games worlds might be better for showrunners just because it gives them space to tell a story as long as they get, like, the aesthetics right.
They need to get the aesthetics right, and they need to have the right number of call outs to the games that you've seen before.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like, I
And it
mean,
doesn't take much to do that.
No, like big organizations that should be involved, that need to be there. Like the Brotherhood of Steel should be involved in a Fallout show. Guess what? There's Brotherhood of Steel. Big shocker.
Yeah.
There should be a vault, at least one.
yes.
There's things like that.
Like they're like guns should sound like Fallout guns. Stim packs should exist. And it's best that you don't explain anything about them. They just work in that world.
There should be two-headed cattle around. Just around.
Rad roaches exist. Ghouls exist.
Like it's getting the setting and the aesthetic right, and having a story that makes sense within that, and then have fun.
And it's made it really easy and fun to watch with my spouse, who isn't really familiar with Fallout, and who in the first couple episodes kept asking, should I know who this person is? Should I know what's going on here? And it's like, no, you need to know what happened in the intro, that there is a vault, and now there are people wandering around doing post-apoc things, and you're good.
Yes. Yeah, like, it's super nice to just be like, hey, you can just...
I've never seen any of these characters in my life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just get into it. It's fine. It's totally whatever you like, whatever part of it you're into works.
And I think, like, going forward, at least for video game adaptations, might be better served if you adapt the world and pin your own story on top of that world.
I really did like also that the first vault is a vault unlike any vault we've seen in video games. Like, that setup was very new to the show.
Right, and it was cool. Like, I mean, it was an interesting idea. And that, like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of stuff that they could have tried to cram into the series that they didn't, which will eventually be payoff, but, like, it could have been easy for them to just cram in every reference to everything that existed in Fallout universe ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they didn't. Like, they left a lot of stuff on the table.
Some of those things can show up in season 2. You got to space it out.
Yep. But, like, I could absolutely see an Elder Scrolls show.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, is, like, use Tamriel, like, as the setting for anything.
Right. Don't tell any of the stories that we already know. Like, tell a story set in that world. Daedras still are a thing. Like, so we'll play with them, I'm sure, in that story, but it gives you enough of a world to build around.
That show is just a little bit trickier because it does have Daedric princes.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess they could get Sheogorath completely wrong, and it would piss me off.
But, like, I don't think you're more likely to get Sheogorath wrong than you are to get the Brotherhood of Steel wrong.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, you can write you can basically write a tone brief for Sheogorath. Ask me how I know. That lets basically anybody who's familiar with it write Sheogorath correctly. And, like, the same is true of the Brotherhood of Steel. And the Brotherhood of Steel is a little bit more flexible because you can be like, look, they put on this front of being all one big thing, but they're actually super fragmented, FYI.
Yeah, like, we've seen multiple different takes on them at this point. You can go off any of those, basically.
And, like, part of the other reason that I think that the Fallout show really works is because the Fallout show is mostly about characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the games aren't. Like, New Vegas is.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, mostly Fallout is about world exploration, not character studies. And so, like, I don't think you could make a game out of what has happened in the show, nor could you really turn one of the games into a good show. and that's
Right.
good because it means they're different. Like,
Yeah, it means that they're actually like making use of the medium properly instead of just trying to shoehorn something in.
Well, and I think it also helps that Fallout itself means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And, from what I've heard, there were a lot of folks working on the Fallout series that were fans of the series in one form or another. And that could be that they were like a fan of the Bethesda only titles, or they were a fan of the Interplay titles, or any combination thereof. But like, they're all perspectives that inform your experience in the Fallout world. And they're all mostly compatible experiences.
yeah, like for all of the complaining, the transition from Interplay Fallout to Bethesda Fallout, like speaking as somebody who has just finished, well, mostly finished, an entire playthrough of every Fallout game. I've done Fallouts 1, 2, New Vegas, and I'm working through 4. Like, it's a smooth transition. People are just mad about Van Buren. And frankly, New Vegas is better than Van Buren would have been.
Yeah.
For those unfamiliar, Van Buren was the code name for Interplay's version of Fallout 3, which Bethesda got a hold of all of the design docs for and were like, no, we're not going to make that, actually. And they made a completely different Fallout 3. And it was the correct choice.
But yeah, so there's, there are tech demos and documents and various things that have made it into the hands of various people. So a lot is known about what Van Buren was going to be. And yeah, there are people mad about it. But then we got New Vegas, and New Vegas is great. So
New Vegas is basically the spiritual successor. New Vegas is basically what Van Buren wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I think that it's frankly a better story with a more interesting space. Like, it's just done better.
Well, there's a lot of games that were limited by the technology of the time, and like I think Van Buren falls into that camp. I definitely know that the design doc that we've seen of what the Blizzard North Fallout or like a Diablo 3 would have ended up being like was a similar scenario where it was that awkward period of not quite having the technology to do proper 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of experienced that when we did the Tron 2.0 playthrough, because, like, it was a great story, kind of awful game engine.
The gameplay hadn't, they hadn't figured. We didn't have those standard ways that first-person 3D games worked yet, and they hadn't realized that jumping puzzles were a bad idea. That's a game I wish Night Dive would remaster.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what is this? The game associated with this card, Queer Witchy Farming Sim of My Dreams.
So first I'll say that the hardcore raider in me is slowly dying a little because the older I get, the more I just want something really cozy in my life. And over the last week or two, I have been playing Wylde Flowers. And yes, this is the queer witchy farming sim of my dreams. I found this game. It's been out for a year and a half, maybe. I found it on a list that I was looking at of like best recent queer games. And I added it to my list and ignored it for a while and finally picked it up because I just needed something chill. And it is definitely that. It's sort of what if Stardew Valley, but fully voice acted with an actual story arc that I care about way more than I thought I was going to when I started playing this game. And has a lot of things to say about grief, which I probably could not have played this game a couple years ago when I was going through my own grief. but it's just really sensitive about it and really excellent about it. And that was also a big surprise to me. A lot of things about aging or taking care of aging people and losing people who are close to you and still building a great life for yourself. So yeah, that was very unexpected. But it is, the things that you expect from this type of game. You move from the city to the small town and you start your farm and get to know all of the townsfolk. But it layers on top of that the fact that you are also a witch. And so, in addition to your farm things, you have witchy things to do. And it's actually tied into a pretty decent story. I mean, I think I know the places that it's going, but it's been very entertaining getting there. And I also really love that this town is made up of people from just every possible ethnicity and background, gender identity. It's delightful. None of it feels like it's beating me over the head with it in any way. These are all just people that all happen to be attracted to this little town and live together. And you learn things about different cultures because you get to know these people and where they're from or where their families are from. And it's just delightful. I've been playing it, said for a bit now. I am on the fall, getting towards the end of the fall of my first year. And that's another thing that I love about this game is that unlike many games of this style where there is a set calendar and I have to plan on my crops and then get them all up before the end of the season and plan for that. In this game, you're a witch, and the seasons don't change until you make them change with your witchy powers. So, if you
Nice.
wanted to be spring for a while and finish up some stuff before you move the season and move the story forward, you can do that.
That's handy.
It's
Nice.
been really great. Sometimes the story pushes you to say, hey, you really should probably change the seasons now. But if you want to be stubborn about it, you can. And it takes the one sort of mild stress of this kind of game and just throws it out the window. Same thing with just there's not enough hours in the day to do all of the farming things and talk to all the people and in this game, as you learn more witchy things, you can just stop time. Oh, it's going to take me a little while to milk all my cows. I'm just going to stop time so that I have time to milk the cows and it doesn't affect the clock, so I can still have the rest of my day to make friends. So little things like that, I think, have really set it apart for me from other similar games. And just getting to know all of the characters. There's, as always, a long list of romanceable characters, and I sort of want to date all of them. People who know me will not be surprised at the one that I am dating first, but they are all delightful, and even the ones that I don't like, I still think it would be interesting to know them better. Some things in this game are a little bit on the nose also. There's no church in this town, but there's sort of a cult based on something that calls itself a religion. And it's run by a guy who is a former child actor, and his name is Cameron.
Oh.
And yeah, but it's interesting. But man, I care about these characters more than I ever have in a game in this genre. So huge kudos for that. So
Little kitty, big city.
There's a little kitty. He's in a big city. And
I picked this up because I did not realize it had released.
yeah,
But I've not had a chance to play it yet.
Yeah, it came out 2 days ago. It is not a complex game, but it is a very cute game. And you're just running around being a cat and running into various animals who need your help with things. And when you help them, mostly they either teach you a new emote, which is, doing a cat thing like big yawn or something, or give you a hat. Like I helped a Shiba who is Big Potato to find his missing tennis balls, and he gave me a Shiba hat because I am Little Potato to show our brotherhood. I'm also an honorary duck because I helped a duck father track down his 4 ducklings who had wandered off and gotten into mischief. There's a little bit of puzzle solving, like some of it is platforming stuff, unsurprisingly, like climbing and jumping onto places to get to things. And then there's also a bit of like finding the thing to pull or a switch to hit or various things like that. Like pretty lightweight generally, but it's a lot of fun. It is delightful.
This one has been on my list, so I'm super excited that it is finally available to me. I have not started playing it yet, but I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yeah. It's kind of like Untitled Goose Game, but instead of being an awful goose, you are being a mostly good kitty. This does occasionally involve tripping humans. Sometimes they're carrying things you need.
Well, I mean, you got to be careful because like they're going too fast. Like you want them to be safe and all.
Yeah.
That's what my cats do.
They need to be watching where they're going. So you just you remind them that if they don't watch where they're going, this is what happens, and then you steal their bagel.
Yeah, I have a deep love for void cats, so I was very interested to see this game, and also hopefully this game won't cause the cat to die in awful ways.
No, it's a very pleasant game. You're not being chased by you're occasionally being chased by a person because you stole his bagel. Or if you make too much of a nuisance inside a store, the shopkeeper will try to grab you and carry you out. That's about it.
You're not being chased by an army of the Is from the Max comic?
No, thankfully.
What is Animal Well?
Oh, man.
What is Animal Well? Like, I've seen screenshots of this, and I still don't know what this is.
It is a Metroidvania. It's probably best known. It's the first game released by Big Mode, which is Donkey's publishing outfit. It's a Metroidvania puzzle platformer. Like, for the most part, you are interacting with this game via solving puzzles and solving platforming puzzles or solving little. You need to make water. You need to hit switches in various ways. And you get certain items that allow you to interact with the world. I have one of the first items you get is a bubble wand. It launches a bubble. The bubble lets you jump on that bubble to get an extra height to your jump. Also, the bubble slowly descends if you're standing on it. This is extremely useful because sometimes you need to go down really far pits in a controlled manner, and that's what the bubble wand is for. You get a disc that you can ride on, but it's very it's very like CRT 8-bit, like low, like 8/16-bit graphics. You are a tiny little slime, and most of the biggest challenges you encounter are animals in a well. It's Animal Well.
Okay. Fitting name.
I am currently trying to get a squirrel to stop running away from me. That is the Hornet style character is a squirrel you see at the end of a path, and you approach it and it runs away from you. Which very much reminds me of your interactions with Hornet in Hollow Knight. But it's fun. I have 2 of the 4 flames needed to like unlock something. I don't know what that thing I'm unlocking is.
Hopefully something good.
I mean, these feel like the statues in Super Metroid, right? So like presumably the end boss is what I'll be unlocking.
Makes sense.
But I definitely recommend it. It's been very fun so far. It also definitely feels like it is drawing a lot of inspiration from like the way you ride on the disc and the way that some of the moves are feels like inspired by Kaizo Mario's type things where you're like riding, you're figuring out creative ways of using like some of the items available to you. Like they definitely do a good job of teaching you all of the things the items can do and tutorializing those. But then there's definitely some really cool puzzles to solve with them then. It's one of those fun things where I don't yet know if I am doing any sort of sequence breaking or not, because I'm just going the routes that I see. Tam, did you say you'd play some of this?
I played like 20 minutes of it. It's I don't have a ton. I picked it up basically because it came on the, hey, this is really good to play on deck.
It is very good to play on deck.
And I was just looking for games to play on deck that I was into, and I played enough of it to be like, oh yeah, this seems cool. I did almost skip it because it's got a stunningly dumb name. But you know, I'm glad because I'm glad I picked it up.
I picked it up. I've heard about this because Kevin Regami was mentioning it, who is the lead of Power Up Audio. Somebody who we're really hoping never turns into Tommy Tallarico.
I'll be honest, like I know the name Donkey, but I don't know anything about who that person is.
Yeah,
it's a tuber. That's all I know.
Yeah, he's a YouTuber, old YouTuber at this point. He's been doing like video game YouTube things. Frankly, I think he's got a little bit of a negative take on most things, so I don't love his content all the time, but this game seems fun. And I mean, I guess he's trying to, you know, put his money where his mouth is by becoming a publisher, and like if he thinks he can figure out how to make good games, whatever, or how to publish good games. But yeah, it's definitely a game that's making the circles in like the Celeste community because of that, some of that stuff.
Star Citizen 3.23.
Boy.
What is being overhauled since you wrote game. Major overhaul patch?
Like the entire game. It's pretty impressive what happens when your team is now the focus. Sometime last year, their single player game hit feature complete. And so a lot of that team is going over to work on the online game. And a bunch of stuff that they had been working on in the single player game is coming over to the actual MMO, including things like UI. So I logged in last night, and I'm not going to say the game is unrecognizable because it is still Star Citizen, but it is a completely new UI. Massive. I have a very, very, very powerful computer. I am running a I've got things loaded on an M2 SSD. I've got 128 gigs of RAM. I've got a 4090 graphics card. And usually I could sit at about 60 frames per second in Star Citizen. Max. I loaded up everything and turned all the graphics up, and I was sitting at 115.
Nice.
Just the performance improvements were stark. But it's coming with, as I said, a complete UI overhaul of almost every part of the game. So, which takes a ton of friction out of a lot of basic movements. Every interactable, or almost every interactable object has a default action. And so if you just press the interact button, as opposed to holding the interact button and clicking somewhere on the screen, you'll hit the default action for that interact button.
Nice.
This is huge. You can just walk up and tap to call elevators, open doors, get into your ship, pick up guns off the ground, pick up and equip things like ammo or med pens. The whole like menu interface, like the diegetic, this is your like personal data assistant, is completely overhauled. So it's got a new, starkly more functional map. You've got a local mini map on your HUD now, so you can find your way around. All of this has come with shop interface upgrades. It's comprehensive. And then on top of that, they've updated the flight model for the entire game, which is a highly controversial move among a certain kind of player because it slows flight combat down fairly dramatically.
Is it also because they've gotten used to it and like what they've gotten used to?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Like the Star Citizen's on, I think its fourth flight model iteration. And each time they're refining it. I mostly think it's been a completely positive curve. It is moving. The very first version was all sim all the time. We're gonna do real physics, etc. And they realized that sucked. Like it was just not fun.
Not actually fun. Yep.
And so they moved to one that was a little bit more. It retained a lot of the sim elements, but reduced ranges on a bunch of things and so forth. So it was closer up and more action-packed, but unbelievably difficult. Like, unless you really understood physics in space, which, let's be real, mostly you don't, the fact that you had fine control over your individual thrust vectors was not super meaningful.
It sounds really cool, but yeah.
Yeah, yes, you have. It's like, yes, they have simulated all 26, maneuvering thrusters on your ships, and you could, contort your joysticks in such a way that you could make some of them fire at this angle and some of them fire at this other angle to accomplish whatever. It was nonsense. It was beloved by a certain type of person, but like it was overly difficult to use. And then they moved to the one that they've been using until yesterday, which was something a little bit that feels a little bit more comprehensible, but runs into the problem of when you're flying, unless you have a very deep knowledge of how to optimize your flight paths, mostly what people did was joust. Like you would get into a fight with somebody, you would accelerate as fast as you can towards them so you can get a lock on them, shoot at them, and then zoom past each other and turn around to do another pass. Which is it's not actually that interesting, and it's fast without that speed being meaningful. So now their current version is called Master Modes, and so called because it's got a very lock your S-foils in attack position. You have flying fast mode, which is your ship basically puts everything towards moving very quickly, and you can make warp jumps, but you don't have shields. Or combat mode, where you drop into a combat speed, which is much, much slower. And you're somewhat more maneuverable, but you're much slower. I haven't gotten used to it yet. It is a dramatic departure from what I'm used to. But the couple of like random bounties I've done have been really neat. And I feel like you can learn them better. One of the things that they did last patch, which is even more noticeable this patch, is rebalanced all of the bounties. Because the higher tier bounties were too easy and the lower tier bounties were much too hard.
Yes.
Their previous balancing was basically just based on ship HP. So high level bounties had ships with the highest HP and low level bounties had ships with the lowest. But the problem is many of the ships with the lowest HP are also the fastest and most maneuverable. So as a new player, you are facing off against like ridiculously zippy tiny ships.
Ugh. Yeah, that would be a problem.
And now, like, honestly, some of the low level bounties I've done, I've rolled into and I'm like, oh man, you're gonna make me fight that thing? This feels like bullying. That's a cargo ship. That thing barely has guns on it.
It was very bad before, though.
Oh, it was really bad before. Oh, it was very
it
not
was
good.
I don't want, like, this is telling me not to engage with this system.
Yeah. No, it's dramatically improved. At least what I've played of it so far is dramatically improved. Different weapons have different roles now. Like there's good reason to use ballistic weapons as opposed to just all laser repeaters all the time. That's still in progress, but there's definitely improvements there. We're not quite in full like ship building, like spec out your ship's gear yet, but your weapon choices do matter. Or your weapon type choices do matter. And then they've also added the entire faction and faction base system. So there's areas that you can go to, and I haven't done this yet, so I don't have much to say about it, but it's areas you can go to that are controlled by a faction and will give you missions and are also the site of where missions happen, as well as wildlife. They've added wildlife. Evidently, some of this wildlife is horrifying. Like very sneaky panther things that will just wreck you if they catch you. And that's before we've gotten into the things that they had to push out from this patch for next patch, which include persistent hangers and a whole bunch of other like random cargo missions. Even just the like hour and a half that I played last night is dramatically different game. And it's not entirely there yet, but I have played released games that are less feature rich than this one is now. This is like, it feels like it is about where some of the better early access games we've played have been. Like, I don't think it's not quite at this is what Hades was like, but it's not that far off of it at this point. It was a huge patch. There were queues to log into the server, which I've never seen before. And it was stunning how much better it was running. Like, I did a handful of missions. They were smooth. They were bug-free. It was fun.
Nice.
It is a dramatic improvement.
Is the economy in, or did you say like shipbuilding is still not there yet?
The economy is not really in yet. There's like, you can make money and use that money to buy parts for your ship, and you do kind of want to do this, but it's not like, you're not going to be making a bunch of different choices between like, oh, I want this kind of engine, but this kind of cooler. Yeah. It's not quite to that level of granularity. Their stated reason is our plan was to completely revamp the flight model, because once we get to the flight model to a place to where we know we want it, then making basically a gear system makes sense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a bunch of improvements that they're hard to like describe in a way that sounds exciting, because they're all little detaily moment to moment things. Mm-hmm. And but like those add up so fast. like, oh, I can more easily navigate around the world. I can more easily interact with items and loot things and, set up my equipment. The game is slightly more optimized, so it just runs better. All of those things they add up super fast. You can individually target components on ships when you're fighting them, so you can actually be very precise about what you're shooting, which is pretty relevant for fighting, for like punching above your weight class, because it means that if you can take out the big guns on scary ships, then you're more maneuverable than they are, and so they can't hit you with the other stuff. It definitely makes a difference. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to try it again, especially with the optimizations.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see, like, I know I have a really powerful computer, and getting into something that's like super functional, it runs better than Cyberpunk does now. And Cyberpunk was running pretty well on my machine.
That's impressive.
I'm really interested to see how it runs on different rigs, and if that, because there were some I could get it to something where it was performing well enough to play, but it was not hard to have a perfectly reasonable computer that just ran it like crap. So I'm very interested to see what it looks like for other folks.
Virtual tabletops. Are you talking about like D&D systems? Yeah. Or okay, I didn't know if you were talking that or Tabletop Simulator, which is also a virtual tabletop.
No. This is I'm looking at running a tabletop RPG in our group for the first time in almost 2 years, and which I've missed dearly.
I just assumed there was always a game going on that I just wasn't in.
I mean, there has been.
There has been. I just haven't been running anything. And I don't know, maybe I need to go to a rehab clinic or something, because it makes me real jittery not to be running anything. But I was looking at, partly because the Fallout show is really good, I was looking at potentially running a Fallout game, and different virtual tabletops have different levels of support for various systems. So I was like, all right, let me take a look at a variety of them. There are a lot of them now.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. There are so many virtual tabletops out there that all have the same feature, basically the same feature set and the same problems, that I don't know that I understand why they exist.
Got to try and get that Critical Role money. I don't know.
I forget the name of it. I did see one that was precision tuned for Twitch streaming. And okay, sure. I guess I understand why you would do that. This is the VTT for live play. Fine. That seems like a niche. But Fantasy Grounds is celebrating its 20th anniversary.
That's wild.
Which is wild. I tried installing it via Steam because I had some codes from 2011, and from when they initially migrated to Steam, they apparently had some problems. I want to say that you can kind of tell that it's celebrating its 20th anniversary.
Yeah, it was always kind of pretty looking, but never felt super functional.
So it showed up in my Steam library, and I clicked install, and it finished. And so I clicked play to boot it up, and it fired off an install exe. And I feel like that tells you most of what you need to know about the experience of trying to get Fantasy Grounds working. It was I'm not even sure how Steam allowed that, but here we are. My current favorite is Foundry. Foundry is just good. As long as you are playing something with enough of a community to build support, because everything is community driven, you're gonna have a great time. If you don't have community support for your game, don't even bother trying to play it on Foundry, because it's gonna be a nightmare. Roll20 is a little bit better if you don't have good systemic support, because you can just sort of wing it.
Yeah, Roll20 always seemed like the utilitarian option.
It's funny because Foundry Foundry is very much the power user option, but it's also very accessible. And Roll20 is both not quite as good for the power user, but also not quite as accessible. But it does fill in so you want to play something obscure that doesn't have support in Foundry or elsewhere. It's cool. Here's a relatively generic character sheet. You don't have to do any automation. Just roll with it. The equivalent of here's some blank sheets of paper for your character sheets, and here's some dice. We're gonna go. So it is good. It's good for that. And then there's like 15 other ones, some of which seem to exist solely for one game. Some of which have like incredibly slick visuals. But like what I want in a virtual tabletop is I want to be able to drop images into a scene easily. And I want to not have to do a whole bunch of back-end coding to make stuff work on my system. And like I quite like the Foundry community. The Foundry VTT community is mostly delightful because they recognize that DMing shouldn't be a bunch of tedious labor. And so like, here are a bunch of files. Do you need some compendiums? Here are a bunch of files. Here's how you install them. This is just a quick 10-step process. Here's how you get everything going. Now you've got everything you need in your game. Go for it. You don't have to reference the book. You don't have to reference all of this other stuff. You don't have to manually enter item stats. They're all right here. If it was published in a book, it's right here. We got it. Do you need a mod that does something particular? Like where we can make it happen. I was really frustrated because Fallout games have the Pip-Boy map, which gives you lots of little markers. I was looking at setting a game in space, and I want to have a star map with a bunch of planets and stuff. And just like, how do I place, the default Foundry does not have a good way of placing like map markers with just like basic location name and some info. There's a mod for that. But I think that pre-pandemic, virtual tabletops were kind of an outlier. And now in 2024, boy, are there so many of them.
Well, I mean, we're also living in the time of DM as a service.
Yes. That was another one that I saw that has like DM payment transactions built in. DM as a service seems wild to me. Sounds like
an
immensely stressful experience.
Concierge GMs.
Yeah.
Whew. I don't want to be a GM for money.
Like, I'm just picturing the problem players who just can't ever find anybody else who wants to run for them. So they hire someone, and now you're their employee.
Right. Like, when you're paying money, they're going to make demands.
Oh, man. So I do know a couple of people who do official, like who do GM for hire. And they have some delightful contracts. Some delightful, like, I am absolutely getting out of, like, I have an exit clause here. You pay by the session. And if I decide that I am no longer doing this, I'm out. Which, honestly, good for them.
Yes.
I don't know. I still have a certain amount of pushback of the process of monetizing every aspect of your life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, like, there's a big reason why I'm not going to be a GM for hire.
This is why I refuse to push the monetization buttons on Twitch. You can't make me.
Yeah, like I mean, not that I stream very often, but like I streamed enough once to get monetized, but also like I've never turned it on because I wish Twitch had the ability to hook your stream to a charity and just like never send me any money, send it straight to this charity. It seems like a feature that they should have.
Oh yeah, Alchemy. Alchemy was the one. It's got like a spectator mode even.
Oh, neat.
What's the licensing model look like for Foundry?
You buy a copy of the software.
Does every player have to have a copy of the software?
No,
just the GM.
Okay.
It's like Foundry is one of the slickest interfaces I've ever seen. It basically creates a web link that you can share, And then if people click on the web link, they just go to your game in their browser. You need to the only person who needs to install any software is the GM. You can buy content like modules or in some rare cases add-ons or like systems sometimes, but most of those are community made, which means that if you do actually spend money on like officially licensed content for Foundry, it has incredible quality. One of the big reasons I've been sticking to Pathfinder 2 is because on Foundry I shelled out for the bestiary, and so just everything that has ever been in a bestiary is just easily drag and droppable into my game.
Nice.
In 2 seconds. It's so slick. And you've got like deeply weird stuff like, is it Demeo? Is it Demeo that I'm thinking of? Yes. Demeo, which is, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's a Steam VR supported tabletop RPG, which I'm so interested in trying, but also like, where am I going to find 3 to 5 other people who all own Steam VR
Yeah.
to do this thing? Yes. It's been interesting to look at, and there's some, as more games, as there's more attention on virtual tabletops in general, there's more and more good support for them, which I'm really excited about, because like the main groups I run for are online.
Yep.
And in a variety of ways, it's actually getting better and easier to run a game online than in person. Like I can just do more stuff with it. And like the minis collector and painter in me laments this because I have all these minis and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make a cool game out of these. And then I never do. RIP all of my Star Wars Legion minis. But like, whatever, I'll just paint them myself. It's fine. Plus the automation. As long as the automation isn't excessive, it's really nice to have. Because it also means that like there are a lot of groups that, not necessarily a problem we have with our groups, but I've run into groups where it's like they don't want to learn new systems because it's a bunch of overhead. And when the software just mostly does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, it's like you don't you can learn the system really easily, especially because a lot of the like fiddly stuff is just handled by this button that's roll whatever stat. And that's so nice.
So Kodra and I were talking about this briefly before the show, but I beat the Feared today.
Nice.
Path of Exile?
Yeah, for anyone who does not understand what that is, there's a bunch of specialty Maven invites from witnessing different things, and the Feared is fighting the Elder, the Shaper, Cortex, Etziri, and Chayula. Yeah, all at the same time.
That sounds like nonsense.
Technically, you start off fighting twosies at a time, and as you beat them, additional ones zone in. But yeah, it was a thing. Like, this was my second attempt at it. It is also like the thing required to get your final favored map slot, which is a challenge. And right now I'm sitting at 32 of 40 challenges completed. There are probably 2 more I can wrap up before getting into things that like I do not want to do at all. You had done the Feared, right, Kodra?
I have done the Feared, yes.
It's a thing.
The one I had to scour.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's most definitely a thing. And like I did it without a bossing character. I did it as Righteous Fire.
I believe one of the things I said at the beginning of this league was my favorite thing is that by default all of the Maven invites are now scoured, so I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to spend the scour orb to like make this thing easier on myself. It saves my ego.
Right. You just run a default now.
It's not easy mode, it's normal mode.
It's not easy mode, it's normal mode.
Yeah, so I mean like I feel pretty good about myself having done this thing.
It's a rough fight.
Like I don't know if there's an achievement associated with it, but I'm certain if there was, it's kind of a pretty low count. Like really the only person that is of any concern is Atziri at that point. And which is weird because Atziri by herself is not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's very weird, but you can usually burst down Atziri before she becomes a problem. But if you're not paying attention to Atziri and you're letting her like use moves against you, it's a problem.
Well, and the challenge that I had is like I think of the Maven arena as being pretty large, but really it's not when you're talking about Atziri. Because like the explosive things that you would normally just avoid and dodge out of cover like almost the entire arena.
Yeah.
And those are a lot of times, like even as tanky as I am as my RF character, which is so nigh indestructible that I no longer run a health flask, that like I still get one shot by these stupid Atziri things.
What you are saying also is why, like, I feel like this is my biggest issue with this game and their concept of difficulty, because for so much of this game, the way that like you're supposed to approach it is actually think about building defenses, right? Like you are doing this correct. You are building more and more defenses and making yourself more and more survivable. Even myself, as like a more glass cannon-y character, I need to care about defenses. And then you get to Ubers where nothing actually matters because all of their damage is so overwhelming, no defense can save you.
Right. Like the answer is you are going to bug out the encounter by dealing too much damage and insta-phasing it. Like that's the answer to fighting some of that content is just don't fight it. Like just one shot it.
The Feared is about the top end of what I think is like I was okay with the Feared. I had a really powerful build for it. I recognize that. But boy, beyond that, it's very heartbreaking. Because you do not like, and I'm sure a lot of builds also feel like they don't have any solution to the Feared. So that's challenging.
I mean, I feel like the game changes once you get past the Feared. Like what it is asking of you is to build a bossing character.
Yeah, the Feared definitely is. The fact that you did it on a non-bossing character is kind of hilarious. That must have been...
I say I'm a non-bossing character, but when all cylinders are firing on my RF character in its current state, it's doing around 5 million damage or DPS.
That's enough.
Yeah, so like it has plenty of damage. I just have to kind of be stationary to do it, which is a problem, admittedly. That
is a problem with the Feared.
Yeah, so basically I would have to dodge Ziri's nonsense and then Frostblink over on top of her and burn her real quick before running away when the next thing happened. Because like that's the problem with Chieftain is I am not doing anything to do elemental penetration. I am relying on the Chieftain ability that is, if something is in range of me and I am stationary, it has -20 resistance to whatever, just overwrites their resistance and it's just -20.
So you need to be close to things.
Right. And like it's really broken because you can run content that has, I forget what it's called. Like mobs can't be exposed to elemental ailments or whatever. Like that stuff doesn't work because it's just saying their resistance is -20.
You can also do this against enemy maps that have like higher resistances against you.
Right. Yep. They will always have -20. It just overwrites the resistance. Anyway, I'm very happy, and I don't want to go down any further into the bossing rabbit hole. I do not want to do Ubers.
That is a good attitude to have.
T17s are still miserable, But
it's unfortunate that that's a good attitude to have, but like that is the correct attitude to have in this game. Don't do the content that they release for like don't do the content that it feels like they are spending the most time on.
I will say though, like I have had more fun this league than I have probably had during any league, just because it is so easy to switch up the content that I'm doing, because scarabs are so plentiful that I just stack 4 of a scarab of a specific mechanic, and it feels like I've spec'd my atlas into it.
I will say that I kind of wish we had this default game state with last league's league mechanic.
Yeah, that would have been really good. I mean, I like the all flames mechanic.
Okay.
I don't care about grave crafting at all. Like, grave crafting is a path of madness.
Yeah. I really am curious, again, like the who are you making this content for? How many people are quote unquote crafters in Path of Exile?
I mean, I feel like that's a very small group.
Yeah.
Especially considering, like, the correct way to craft is to acquire 88 corpses perfectly placed in a specific pattern.
I'm not even saying that. Like, who is the people who are, who were in the previous times doing the stuff like, oh, I need to get, like, I'm going to go and buy myself a bunch of, what was her name? The slams.
Oh, Ashlings?
Yeah. How many of the player base was doing enough crafting to want to purchase Ashling's services? Like, what's the percentage of your player base interfacing with the crafting system at that degree?
I feel like it was all the same people.
Yeah, like my guess is it was probably less than like 0.1% of your population.
But the frustrating thing is the removal of veiled chaos really hampered a lot of people who could do some pretty simple crafts. And now the veiled orbs are rare enough that they're like 12 divines each. So I don't know. Like I think they're gonna have to backtrack that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I try and interface with crafting in this game, it makes me wish I was playing Last Epoch, because a game with a crafting system I like.
Anyway, we have gone well over our time.
Yup.
Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and hopefully no one has twisty weather this week. And we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.